And this training will be recorded so we can share it afterwards.
Woo, way to warn me, John. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Good morning. All right, let me go ahead and share my slides. There we go. I'll make it easy. Okay, there we go. All right, so, okay, good morning and thank you for joining today. I really hope that everyone is keeping sane and healthy in this very cold month of November. So today I am presenting a training on how to complete the Decision Maker Matrix, which is an aspect of the Midwest Academy strategy chart that a lot of us are required to complete when we're funded to do tobacco control or tobacco prevention work. As we just experienced an election last week, there are definitely some cities within Orange County that saw turnover among elected city officials. Now is a great time to update those matrices. And as the informal title of this presentation says, I'm here to show you a process to complete these thoroughly without getting overwhelmed. My hope after this training is with anyone with any kind of basic research skills and access to an internet browser can complete a detailed decision maker matrix. Okay, so before we get started, I'd like to start with an icebreaker. So I think we've all dealt with this particular dilemma before. You're out with a group of friends or family, you're all starting to get hungry. In the chat, please note or write down your ideas. How do you decide what or where to eat for dinner? Is it something you plan ahead? Oh, Victoria says her soul tells her, okay. Gather ideas from everybody. Anything else? Okay, that's okay. Okay, so Jonathan gathers top 3 ideas, top 3 and vote on it. Faithlin says Yelp reviews and recs. Yelp location, okay. You look in Mount Freezer, Jonathan, that's very funny. Okay, so basically this question is meant to help you think about what goes into decision making, especially when it involves people that are important to you. At the base level, what are we considering? So how many people are joining for dinner? Dietary restrictions. Does this place need to be child or infant friendly? Who's preparing? Who's paying? And who's most difficult to please and who tends to like everything? So honestly, these questions are not unlike some of the considerations that decision makers have to deal with when they choose to take action in a specific policy. So thank you everybody for your participation. So here are our learning objectives. So first, I'll give you a rundown of what a decision maker matrix is and why it's important. Second, I'm going to give a basic introduction to city councils and elections so we all have a mutual understanding of the environment that they operate in. This may certainly be a review for some people, but it's still pretty important to go over. Lastly, I'll be going over some search techniques I employ to be thorough without spinning your wheels. We're very lucky in Orange County, actually, that we have a trove of information, but even me, a person of pretty reasonable skill, thought that it would make it so easy. And I was completely wrong. I found that many times during the process, I was feeling completely overwhelmed. So by following an order of operations that I lay out, you can make sure that you're going over the information available in a thorough but very manageable way. Okay, so let's go ahead and have a start. So what is a decision maker matrix? Simply put, it's just an analysis tool to help us figure out potential policy positions of our elected decision makers. And it examines elements of a decision maker's life that may impact how they move on policy. And the ones listed here are not exhaustive, but they're pretty critical. So for instance, if an election is close, the decision maker may not, may be more sensitive to public opinion. Past voting trends can give us a clue as to the type of policies they've supported in the past and the types of appeals that resonate. And lastly, city stakeholders don't just include constituents, they also include businesses and organizations that operate in the city, grassroots organizations, school districts, and law enforcement. So another group exercise. So these are some 3 important pieces of information with regards to Representative Y. They won their election with 50.8% of the vote. Their opponent was close, they got 49.2%. They previously owned a small IT support business for 15 years, and they have 2 children attending elementary school in their district. Knowing these facts about the specific representative, what kinds of appeals, or how do you think this person should be approached if you want them to pass a specific policy? Anybody have any ideas that can type in the chat? Would be great. No one has any ideas? Person?
Yeah, maybe I would look to see which part of the vote he didn't get, or which demographic he didn't get to, convince to vote for him, to see where he's most vulnerable.
Okay, that's good. Anyone else have any ideas? Okay, so Jonathan says will be good for kids. Yep, because if their kids go in their district, they're going to be much more sensitive to maybe educators or administrators in that particular school district. So basically these little, so what does this show you? So basically the decision maker matrix captures these little nuggets of information. And that is the point of the matrix. Finding these kind of helps you hone in on the best strategies to approach decision makers. Look, we're all busy people doing this, but doing this type of research up front is going to help save time and resources. So for instance, if you know a decision maker is going to be termed out within the first couple of months of your project, it may not be worth devoting resources to approach that particular person. Well, they may be a better contributor as a key informant interview prospect, perhaps. So, okay, so here are the 4 elements of what comprise of a decision maker matrix. So contact information and more official public information is housed. Information about their term, so generally when they've been elected or when their term is up. Extra good details to include is how they were elected, elections or by appointment, how many terms they've served in the past. These are kind of important details because Politics 101 courses will tell you that people who have held elected offices for a while generally have very safe seats. And here is the actual picture of the matrix itself. I'm happy to share these presentation slides after the meeting, and it does include the link to the Tobacco Endgame Center because this is their blank template. So some specific considerations, at least for TUP and within Orange County. The decision making matrix can be used to research any kind of elected official, but for this presentation, I'm focusing on city councils. And as mentioned, as I mentioned before, you complete one of these prior to a Midwest Academy strategy session, and ideally when a new city council member is seated. And you'll notice I said seated because, and seated and not elected, because not all city council members are directly voted in by constituents, which is the perfect segue into explaining the general structure of city councils. So your local city councils are the elected governing body of a city. In California, city councils have to have at least 5 members. Most city council members serve 4-year terms, and they do this work part-time, which is crazy to think about, but that officially it's a part-time job. City councils oversee the general administration of the city. They make policy, they set budget, and then they appoint a professional city manager to carry out the day-to-day work. And then next is the mayor. So the mayors are sort of the official head of the city. And apart from presiding over city council meetings, they participate in ceremonial events, and they also sign off the documents. Vice mayor is another term used for mayors pro tempore. So for instance, Westminster and Irvine use the word vice mayor instead of mayor pro tempore. And except in the largest California cities, thinking Los Angeles and San Francisco, mayors and mayors pro tempore don't necessarily have any additional powers above their fellow city council members. They're considered first among equals. They are part of city council and participate in all the activities listed for city council members. However, the ability to be able to preside over city council does mean they have a large influence over the city's legislative agenda. Okay, so election types. So I'm gonna be using these terms throughout, so just pay attention here. So at large means that voters of an entire city elect all the members of city council, and by district means is when the city is divided into districts and each district is represented by a city council member who resides in that district and is chosen by the voters who live in the same district. And I know abstractly that's kind of difficult to think about, but here is a diagram. And this is a great diagram made by the city of Petaluma. And as you can see on the left, voters within the city select city council members. In this case, the candidates who win are the ones that earn the most votes in the city. Usually the top 2 or the top 3, depending on the number of seats up for re-election. That's why you see on the ballot sometimes pick 2, pick 3. If you have at-large elections. To the right, the city is divided into 6 districts, and voters within a district select the representative. Again, the selected council member must live in the same district. So in order to be eligible for the District 2 seat, the candidate must live within the borders of District 2. And there's usually like some sort of like time requirement as to how long you've lived in that particular city. So something to note specifically in Orange County, many are shifting from at-large elections to by-district elections. So for instance, most recently, the city of Westminster adopted an ordinance for by-district elections in 2019 to be implemented in the 2020 elections. So elections for districts 2 and 3 occurred in 2020, and then elections for districts 1 and 4 occurred last week. So overall, don't be surprised if you see a city council where some of the members have districts and some don't. It may not be an error. It could be that because they're transitioning election types. Okay, lastly, unforeseen vacancies can be filled by special election or appointment. To be considered for the appointment, the candidates typically have to follow the same process as those who apply for appointments to city boards, commissions, and committees. So for example, in the city I'm sorry. For instance, Darren Nixarian was appointed to fill a vacant seat on city council in La Habra in February 10th of this year. He and other interested candidates had to submit a candidate statement and they had to interview for the position. And he got it, but he has since decided to run for re-election last week. And I think he won the seat. Okay. So mayors can be selected one of 2 ways. They can either be directly voted in by voters through at-large elections or by appointment by city council. And then mayors pro tempore are also selected by city council. So when your fellow city council members choose the mayor or the mayor's pro tempore, normally the positions rotate so that every member gets a turn during their respective term. For instance, we see this in the city of Buena Park. I know that the mayor position and mayor pro tempore positions rotate there. And I also believe it happens in La Habra. Okay, so yeah, but just always make sure that you're double checking because there are always exceptions. And you never know, you never know if a city is unique in its own way. Okay, so now that we went over basic basic structure of the city council, let's go ahead and so we're gonna, now that there's some context to what we're seeing, let's dig into the available information sources and search techniques to complete this matrix. Okay, so first is where to find official sources on city council terms. So of course this information can be Googled, but it's always good to verify using an official source. So the following are the sources you can use to check the length of city council terms and if any limits apply. And in the next 4 slides, I'll show you screenshots. So not all cities present information in the same way. And even for basic elections information, I sometimes had to dig through primary sources like the city charter or the municipal code to figure this stuff out. So basically, if you can't find what you're looking for at the first listed source here, just go down this list. So start with the city elections homepage, or excuse me, the city council homepage, the elections page, the city charter, and then the municipal code. Okay. So here is the city council homepage for the city of La Habra, and here the member terms are listed very clearly, which is wonderful. We like that, makes it easy to look at. Here in the city of Westminster, we had to actually look at the elections page for the city in order to figure out the term information and if the limits apply. In the city of Cyprus, I believe I had to look at the city charter to see how long each of the terms were, so, and if there's any term limits. And then lastly, you can also look at the municipal code, and here it's listed in the city of Anaheim. All right, so this is actually the most complicated part, is how to get to know your city council folks by looking at publicly available information. All right, so the thing I want to impress upon here is that there is not a single source of information that's going to serve as your depository of everything you're going to need to complete a matrix. Information is definitely spread out through multiple sources. However, following this order can help you keep focused. So it starts with sources that will give you the most focused but limited information. So a city council member's self-written biography, then moves into sources that may give a lot more information. So things like press or social media. So it's kind of like reading a person. You let them talk about themselves and then you go look them up. So let me give you a roundup of these sources and what you may be able to find or what to look for when you're looking at these sources. Okay, so in official city council website profiles, city council members typically have short biographies on themselves that can serve as a basis of finding other info you need to complete the matrix. And other juicy tidbits you may find from them is regional committee involvement. So for instance, the Association of California Cities or the Orange County Public Library Advisory Board. I do have some samples, so let me just pull those up really fast. Let's see. No, I don't. Let's pull that out. But I believe there are at least, I think Ann Hertz-Malari from the city of Cypress has her regional committee involvement. I apologize, I forgot to pull it up. But yeah, it's possible to get that kind of information from an official city council biography. Okay, so next is looking at election results. I think we're all familiar with this website, but if not, I'd like to provide a demo. Let me see here. Just give me 1 second. Okay. Okay, I think you should be, can someone give me a thumbs up just to make sure they're seeing the OC vote screen? Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Okay, so what you're gonna do is if you wanna look at results, you go to results. 1 second. You're gonna go to election results archives if you were not looking up the current results with the current election. So for this one, I'm gonna choose the one for just 1 minute for 2018. I'm so sorry, give me 1 moment. Okay, I apologize for that. We had a wayward dog come in here. All right, so we're going to go with the November 2018 statewide general election, and then the results will be loaded. So here I'm going to look at Bonaparte. And then if you just do that Control F search, you'll be able to see the results of the Bonaparte City Council election. So what we can see here is that, at least here, Connor Trout won handily, but someone like Sunny Park and Elizabeth Swift, didn't win with quite a large margin. So safe to say that these, council member Trout may have an easier time, maybe pursuing more personal projects rather than being too sensitive to public opinion. All right, let me switch screens again. Okay, I think we're back on the PowerPoint. Okay, so campaign election websites. So these are kind of important pieces of information. These are important websites in order to get information to complete the matrix, because this is where elected officials tend to give information on their policy platform, and they also publicize their endorsements. So basically, you get a list of their supporters, which is kind of nice. I'll just keep in mind that city council members also run for state and other regional offices, and they're really good sources of information. So you don't necessarily need to be looking at their campaign website for city council, because sometimes they run for higher offices. So a thing that I've noticed is sometimes city council members tend to shut down their websites right after elections, but you can always find archive versions through something called the Wayback Machine. The Wayback Machine basically just takes pictures of what the website has looked like in the past. And it's just a really good resource. So again, I'm gonna show a really quick demo. Okay, so this is the Wayback Machine. So one of the elected officials that tried to run for state office but unfortunately did not succeed is Kimberly Ho from Westminster. And as soon as she didn't win her primary, she took down this votekimberlyho.com website. So when you go into the Wayback Machine, all you have to do is just paste the link into their search engine. And then you're going to come up with this calendar with highlighted dates. And basically, these are the dates in which the Wayback Machine took snapshots of their website. So if you click at it, you'll be able to basically look at an archive version of Representative Kimberly Ho's campaign website when she ran for a state office. So it does take a second because it is an older version, but you will be able to see it. Let's give it a, okay. It doesn't want to perform. Okay, but anyway, so it basically just takes a snapshot of the website. Again, it's a good way to look up information on an elected official. All right, and then another thing I wanted to point out is that some elected officials also use something called Voter's Edge. This is a really good website to get candidate information, provided that the candidate themselves actually provide information. So just something to look at. I know that the larger candidates for state and for national office tend to complete Voter's Edge websites or profiles. Okay. Okay. And then I mentioned Voter's Edge. Okay. So social media are fun social media. Okay. So what I've actually found is that social media information is usually listed on campaign websites as the most reliable place to find them. And you can also run searches on a city council's name or city council member's name in each of these platforms. And another thing to note is sometimes when city council members win these elections, what they'll do is they'll pivot their page to just broadcasting city news. And then one way to kind of figure out a way to get the information that you need to complete the matrix. The thing to do is just to look for information leading up to elections. So this is when people post about events or sometimes they live stream Q&As or they do video where they do Q&As so their residents can get to know them. And this is also another place where they can publicize, where they publicize endorsements. And lastly, just, keep an eye and ear out for new social media platforms. We have a new Gen Z member of Congress, so just keep that in mind. And some of these platforms tend to draw in huge audiences. Now, I know that they're national representatives, so so for instance, Representatives Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar, when they play the game Among Us on Twitch, which is the live streaming platform to show video games, their audience peaked at 435,000 people. So just be aware that these platforms can get, that they're popular among younger folks and something to look out for, because again, candidates may be starting to use them in order to appeal to voters. All right, so news clips. So we all know our standard sources for local news here in Orange County, but also just be aware that there's sometimes city-specific papers that are still operating. Unfortunately, not all cities, but at least for some cities. And if you know other languages, checking out other newspapers and other languages in your city can also be quite helpful. So for instance, Korean language media in Buena Park or Vietnamese language media in Westminster. And with regards to how to focus your research on news clips, reading up on recent headlines, especially if they involve city council, is really important, so you kind of know what's going on. So I mean, I feel like I keep hitting on Westminster, but they're just such a great sample city for this presentation. But basically, there's a lot of press with regards to the city's budget. So understanding that means that budget considerations are something to consider when we're asking them to pass policy. or when folks ask them to pass policy. And another thing to look out for when it comes to press is that sometimes they publish city council candidate Q&A sessions during election season. So for instance, the OC Register published profiles on 9 candidates this year in the OC Board of Education. They don't do it for all elections, but it's just something to look out for, because again, it's another piece that it's another way to find out about a platform. Okay, so now we're going to review how to go over city ordinances and other actions so you can note a city council member's voting history. So just a quick review. Ordinances are the laws of a city passed by city councils, and they normally require 2 readings unless it's an urgency or basically an emergency ordinance. So during the pandemic, a lot of urgency ordinances passed because they just wanted to get them through as quickly as possible to provide relief. And then obviously city council meetings provide opportunities for public comment before passage when these ordinances are read. So luckily, all cities have publicly available list of ordinances that are online and they're searchable, which is wonderful. These are the terms that I would suggest you look up to see if there's any tobacco related ordinances. So but obviously sometimes tobacco related ordinances happened years ago and it may not be relevant to the people that you're looking at today. In which case you can also use, you can also look up adjacent topics. So cannabis, marijuana, or public or environmental safety, I feel is kind of related to all those things. And another thing to look up is maybe look up ordinances that are affected by the spaces you're trying to affect. So parks, outdoor dining spaces. So once you have identified ordinances to review, you should look up the related documents. So meeting minutes, pretty standard, and any videos and transcripts of ordinance readings, especially during public comment sessions, because unfortunately not all meeting minutes are super descriptive of what people have to say. Sometimes it's good to just actually view what they said during that session. Admittedly, because the search function on a city website is not always great, they don't link ordinances to the actual meeting they're considered and discussed. And really the only way to view the connection is to Google separately, but I'll demonstrate that in a moment. And debate and discussion during ordinance readings and public comments can reveal reasoning behind a city council member's vote. So if a city council member cites budget concern, that's something to note in a decision maker matrix. So another thing to consider is just, it's possible that someone is too new to decide on tobacco or tobacco adjacent issues, and that's totally okay. Just note it in the matrix. Not everybody has to be there for years and years in order to create a decision maker matrix on them. Okay, so this is the big demo. This is the one where things can get a little bit complicated, but I'll try to make it as easy as possible. So this is a quick demo on how to search the city ordinances. So let me just get set up for it. Okay. 1 second. Okay. So first thing you want to do, we're going to do this for the city of Westminster. We're going to see if anybody has voted on any tobacco related ordinances there. So first, I'm going to Google City of Westminster Municipal Code. And here are the results that come up. And then if you click on here, it will take you to the actual municipal code itself. Beautiful. All right. So where do I find ordinance list? I want to say that most ordinance websites I've seen have this same or very similar layout. The only big difference is usually colors. So what I want to do is you want to head over to quick links. You're going to hit the ordinance list. And then all the ordinances that has ever passed in the city is actually listed on here, which is wonderful. So quick thing to do is just search for the term tobacco. So here we find that Ordinance 2514 is related to tobacco in the city of Westminster. Now in the city of Westminster, prior, before before their recent move into by district elections, I think generally they didn't have any term limits. So it is possible that somebody on sitting city council or has actually voted on something like this. So what I do is I Google it separately, Ordinance 2514 in the city of Westminster, and then it'll take me to the actual minutes where it's been approved. So just give me one moment. It's here because I checked it earlier. All right, here we go. Adoption of ordinance 2514 relating to tobacco product retailers. The mayor and city council adopted an ordinance. And I know that Mayor Trita is actually one of the people who approved it because he's listed over here. So this is the way, it's a little bit convoluted, but you can make the jump from ordinance to the city council. You just have to Google it separately. Okay, so back to the PowerPoint. Okie dokie. All right. So another thing to note in terms of city council action that you're going to see in the minutes. So again, just to give some context to what you're reading. So resolutions they're just an action that doesn't really amend the city's municipal code. Resolutions can be anything like, we're going to recognize, you know, the Great American Smokeout. That will usually be done through like a resolution. So it doesn't amend the municipal code, but it provides a certain action. Because they're not going to change the code to recognize something like that. And then minute orders are just they're the least formal city council action, and it's just usually to establish procedures and provide direction to staff. Okay. And then another city council action that a lot of us have discussed actually and have seen is something called a study session. And they're just informal gatherings for people to discuss a specific issue. And I know in Buena Park, they definitely held a study session when they were considering their flavors ban. And just I wanted to note that these are kind of difficult to search just because unlike the city ordinance, they don't have published lists that you could just search like I did earlier. But if you find any related city council actions related to tobacco and other adjacent issues in resolutions, minute orders, or study sessions, just follow the same process as you would for reviewing an ordinance. And actually, just one thing, I wanted to include something what's called a consent calendar. A consent calendar is basically agenda items that agenda items that fall under this list are usually actions that city council need to approve, but don't necessarily need to acquire individual debate. So sometimes they do a bunch of these approvals at once, just so that they can be approved and passed in one go. And I have seen second readings of ordinances fall under consent calendar items. So just something to consider. And lastly, some final observations. So public safety officials, so we're talking police officers or Homeland Security officials, they tend to have a low online presence just for their personal safety and the safety of their family. So if a city council member is a police officer, either active or retired, by the way, you may not find a lot of information about their family. You may not find a lot of personal information about them. That's actually very common. So, not something to worry too much about. And then another thing to consider is that if someone's been in office for a very, very long time, they're not really incentivized to keep their information up to date. So you may not find just something to think about. So that's really all of my presentation. And then lastly, another thing to consider is if you think that if a certain piece of information doesn't seem relevant, it's okay to just put it away. In the process of researching this, I have seen some amazing things from our elected city officials, from really interesting YouTube video interviews. I've seen a music video. I've heard about family drama. This stuff is not really, they're fun to read about, but not necessarily relevant in completing a decision maker matrix. So just consider what is going to advance your policy when you're completing the matrix so that you don't get stuck in these, admittedly, they're kind of fun rabbit holes sometimes. So, that's it for me. And it's been really fun for me to put together this presentation and share what I've learned through this process. And, I commend all of you for wanting to learn more about how to better strategize working towards all of our goals. Yeah, and I'm here for any questions.
How many cities in Orange County have you conducted these for?
3.
Which one was the most fun?
Oh, come on. Garden Grove.
So I think that if you found that the politician had a song and dance video, then we can give them our song and dance and they'll be very open to it.
Yeah.
The music video means they'll be open to our song and dance, but that's just an expression. And I'm good. But I really, you put on a wonderful presentation and I can see all the work you did. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very kind. I see her, Darlene's hand is up.
Yes. What were the 3 cities that you did?
So, no, I did 4 of them. Excuse me, I did 4 of them. So it was Garden Grove, Westminster, Cypress, and La Habra.
Well, I agree. Excellent job. I'm going to be using this information. If you ever do Anaheim, please let us know.
I'm happy to share any decision maker matrix you've created thus far. I will say that there's going to be some I mean, obviously I've been like everyone else, just kind of keeping an eye on election results, and I know that we're going to have to update a couple of ours already. So thank you very much for the very kind words, Darlene. And I'm glad, I'm hoping, you know, again, I'm hoping that anyone with basic research skills and a browser should be able to complete one now.
Oh, definitely. I'll be using it.
I'm so happy. Thank you. Okay, does anyone else have any questions or concerns or anything they'd like to share? And another thing too is, again, bringing it back to City Westminster, there's a lot going on in that city. You know, once you complete one, if you know a resident, if you know someone who is in the know of the politics of a particular city, share them, share your matrix, confirm whether or not your information is correct, or maybe there's something you may have missed. So another thing to think about.
Yeah, well, thank you. That was a great presentation. I learned a lot, and I didn't know that there was some at-large city councils here in Orange County, and so those are always interesting.
Yep.
Because you have to win over the whole city, not just that district that you belong to. So thank you. I think there's definitely going to be a lot of use from this presentation. Thank you.